Welcome back to Beyond the Guidelines, the podcast that takes you past the listings, the programs, and all the polished sales talk to reveal the real people that are shaping today's real estate world. Here we uncover the personal stories, struggles, and wins that define each guest, giving you a fresh human perspective on the business. I'm Ryan Speltz, and at Creative First Mortgage, we're on a mission to help you see the person behind the professional, because real estate isn't just about deals, it's about the connection. Today's guest, I'm super excited to introduce to you, Juan Manuel. I've actually met him quite a while ago. We've done a couple episodes now, and I'm excited to have him back for this podcast. I asked Juan Manuel, man, I can't say that today. Juan Manuel's purpose before the show, and he mentioned that his purpose is to be his genuine self, to guide those that want to be educated in their journey through real estate. So really solid there, Juan Manuel. You've got it figured out. Juan, tell us a little bit about how you got to the purpose, and let's dig a little deeper into that. And how do you utilize that in your everyday real estate business?
Yeah, so thank you. It's always great seeing you, and thank you for having me back on. First of all, so the I had to I had to revisit a lot of things, to be honest. And for me, and this applies to a lot of other colleagues, but for me, it's not about the actual transaction. I love teaching, period. I just that's why I put that. It's really about the education. Whether a client uses me as their guide, right, on that journey or not, it's still the satisfaction of creating that particular relationship in time and knowing that I'd had a presence at least for a moment, right, or throughout the entire journey. So it's when it comes to just that the education part, it's me giving pretty much 150% of what I know and what I don't know, because obviously I have other colleagues I can rely on for information that's not there. And obviously, if there's anything regarding, the lender side, obviously you're there, right, Ryan? So I don't overstep my boundaries where I know I can't swim, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's really, I step back. I just kind of listen to myself. It's like, you know what? Do I really want to be posting just listed or just sold? Hey, that's great, but to me, it really has no purpose. It's really the client that that goes through that journey. That's why if you look on my social media on Instagram, you'll see a few things, but you won't really see a lot of what I've done with the clients, just because for me, it's kind of like a private moment for them, right? And that's why I choose not to. Now, if the client wants to, great, but that's why I choose not to take any pictures or things like that, because for some reason, I don't know, maybe the universe just has it in for me as far as like attracting a certain type of client. It just works for me. So Um, that's what I got on that part. As far as why I put that there, for it, because it just comes naturally to me. And the 1% or the top 50, it's that comes eventually, but it's not my focus.
I think you're really good about attracting the right type of person to work with you, and just be in your presence as well. I know that we have talked about that off camera before, of how you're just kind of putting your persona out, and as the business comes, and you're not forcing anything to work with people you don't necessarily align with, and you're able to educate people that will work really well with you. And I think that's such a huge part of a solid business plan. Is, if you're always out there trying to force transactions to work, you end up not wanting to do what you do.
That's very true, and then you get burnt out, right? Because like you mentioned, you're forcing it, and in the beginning, sure, that's part of it, right? But um, it's just not for me. Right now, I am currently, following up with some client leads that they're more prospects, that they're not solid clients, but they have engagement. So that's where my focus is, and I've actually had to think about where I actually want to, where I want my niche to be. I'm really great with investors. It's just logic, right? It's numbers for them. But at the end of the day, it's I have a certain area of my life that is very, very personal to me. And when it comes to, and I don't know if I'm getting off topic, so I'll just go with it. But I went to a mastermind for LPT, the brokers that I'm in when was it? Last week. And I just met some phenomenal colleagues throughout the United States. They were like from everywhere. And there were a few of them that I met, and it was just, these are my people because they are just, they go with the flow, just like you, Ryan. And it was a point where I met with Shannon and Todd. They're a couple, and they're like, well, why don't you focus on that particular niche? And for me, it's, and in that particular niche, I'm very, very passionate about. I'm epileptic, and I love educating on that. That's pretty much all my TikTok. And you do not see real estate on my TikTok. And autism plays a huge factor in my life because my two youngest sons are on the spectrum, like I've mentioned before. So the agent's like, well, why don't you like go that route? So now it's part of that rediscovery because the reason why I'm really thinking about that is when I meet with clients, I like to connect on a psychological and emotional level, but not on an emotional part that it takes over the transaction, right? It's just that one-on-one or family to myself. So that's where I find myself right now in that rediscovery in pretty much starting my business again. So yeah.
I think that's an exciting place to be though as well, and a lot of people would look at it as a fearful thing or oh no, I got to kind of start over. But w- I think there's a lot of value in consistent rediscovery, and you know, I attribute this all the time with constantly changing environments. But I mean, you look at Madonna and see how many people she's been and how long she's been relevant, right? Like because she continually changed and adapted and reinvented, and it's super important. And you can really tell the people that don't look at the world in that lens, and you can see it with certain agents and lenders as well, where they're still doing what they did 20 years ago, and then not understanding why the business has gone down, and then they blame the market, and then they spiral into stuff outside themselves, when really
Yeah.
all it would have taken was a couple of tweaks of either who they are becoming, or just growing, or just a small change, and they'd be able to run with the business in the same way. So I think that's exciting for you.
It is, and to be honest, in the beginning, the uh, my sponsor at LPT, when we first started talking, and this was a couple years ago already, she goes, "You have a very particular niche that you can get into," and I didn't understand it at the time. Like I knew what niche meant, but I really didn't delve into it. I guess maybe that part of me was not ready, and uh, going back to to that mastermind that I attended, it's more, your mind opens when there's clarity. And now it's really like, wow, okay, I understand it now. W- So I have to restructure it in the terms where it doesn't kind of violate any of the guidelines that we follow as realtors, right? And just go from there. It really does. Obviously, we all have to, keep on with our business. If new business comes in, we take care of them just like, a client, right? They become family. But it's, yeah, rediscovery is the I'm in that part of my life where it's rediscovery.
Yeah, I think a lot of
Yeah.
us recognize or don't recognize that really like who we are is inside all the time, right? And it's ever changing. And even after this conversation, I'm going to be a different person after having it with you. But the piece of it is chiseling away to get to the person that you want to be, right? It's like the sculptor. Like he looks at a rock and he sees a statue in it. We see a rock, the guy sees a statue. And so sometimes it does take somebody else's perspective uh, on our situation to recognize and to absorb it, right? Because we can look at ourselves in the mirror and see somebody that's struggling, and somebody else looks outside and goes, man, you're doing awesome, or this is the avenue you need to go into. And it's such a cool thing to have somebody else with that perspective for you.
It really is, and I think this person, I think the how can I put this? But so I guess I'll go back a couple months. In late February, I started going back to the gym and taking care of myself. So I'm refilling my own cup. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss, just because me personally, if I did not give back, I would feel empty, right? But there's a certain point that you can only give so much, and then you're done. So I think the past, let me see, what is February? We're like 4 months. The past 4 months, I've been very consistent in a health journey where my mind is clearer and accepted the message, right? So, and that goes back to your point. It really is, you're that sculptor, and you need that feedback, or that guidance, but at that right time when it
Mhm.
comes to you. And that right time just happened to be at Top Golf, because after the mastermind on the second day, we all went there just to have fun, and it just happens at the right time for you at that moment, at that present. So it was real nice. Yeah.
I think that, yeah, that's awesome. And being able to, just being able to recognize and look back at that time frame and going, yep, that was it. And that can be something that you can, just that one moment, you can frame in a way of being able to utilize that for the rest of your careers. Like that can be the turning point. And when you get stuck down the line, you look back and you go, okay, how would this person, or how would this person have received it, or how would that person that told me that, how would they have said something that impacted me? And you can use it as a way to kind of frame it outside yourself, because often, like we said, we look in the mirror and we don't see what other people are seeing. So taking ourselves outside like that, it can be really valuable.
It
So
it,
the
it really is.
one thing we asked you before the show was, obviously we kind of touched on your niche a little bit there, which, finding the niche is, you don't have to operate in a niche or anything like that, and a lot of people wouldn't even call it a niche, because it is part of kind of what you deal with on a daily basis with the epilepsy, and having two sons that are autistic, and being able to, kind of utilize that in your content in the day to day as an education piece. I wouldn't even consider that to be, a niche per se. It's just lifestyle, and being able to incorporate your lifestyle and what you're doing, I think is super cool to see on from the outside. I love watching all your TikToks and education pieces. How are you kind of interweaving, because it is really easy to try to keep things separate, right? Like, this is my real estate, this is my life. How are you
Yeah.
kind of interweaving them a little bit?
So that's a really great question. Um, the and that question actually started almost 4 years ago now, and that's just ironic that you mentioned that. So the first of all is, all right. Let's take the epilepsy right part. I I barely drive. Hold on, one. You're a real estate agent. You're supposed to go to homes and whatnot, right? But how are you doing business if you're not driving, right? That obstacle. So weaving that particular obstacle is, my wife and I made a pact. I don't drive more than 10, 12 miles, like radius, from where I currently live. And then if I have to drive further, I stop for 15 minutes, I rest, and then keep on going, right? Uh, but if anything else, my wife takes me. I take an Uber to a client's home. I take an Uber back, or if my son has a day off, like, and I have to be somewhere, he'll take me, right? So the method of getting to a location is definitely there, right? And interweaving that part is really, believe it or not, real estate is supposed to be stressful, but it brings peace to my mind, which is very odd. Because I've been in a lot of different corporate jobs, and I've had attacks, while I'm on the floor, well, at that particular job, and it was just a stress. But there's something about real estate that, and I think it's more of the education aspect that just keeps my brain alive in a sense, right? Where it keeps it sharp. Let's use that. Um, and when a client, let's say, I'm very direct with clients. If we get into a conversation when I'm doing a buyer consult or a seller consult, it's I don't get to business at first. I want to know about them, right? I like to see what's in their home, like what's their purpose, what do they love, right? So it I approach it where if there's something relatable, doesn't have to be about epilepsy or autism, but if there's something relatable where I see something and it's very personal, that's when I get into the conversation. Oh, this is how I've dealt with things. But the so that's how I weave it as far as business, and then I don't have a shame with that, right? And then if a client is like, man, you know what? And I've had this happen. I don't think we would work together, but you need to talk to my friend. I'm like, cool, let's talk. But and if somebody asks me about that, it literally just gets into the conversation of that one aspect of my life, and they get to know me for me. They don't get to know me for real estate, and that's what I enjoy. So weaving it for me, I've kind of mastered that. And the reason why I mentioned it started 4 years ago is because about 4 years ago is when I decided to just go cold turkey and take things out of my diet because my epilepsy, it was out of control. Um, I was about 220 pounds. I'm 185 pounds now, but the reason why I mention that is I took out a lot of carbs, white sugar, caffeine, and little by little, my health began to increase. And my doctor, they're like, "Who are you?" So they're like, "Have we had any seizures?" And I'm like, "No." They're like, "Well, that's good. You're doing something right." So I know this was a little extended, but that's how I weave, real estate and what I currently have with my current condition and the the lifestyle. I like that word better, actually. So thank you for that. The lifestyle that my family currently lives. So it's just another conversation. Um, I'm not ashamed of it, and that's how I do it. Um, yeah.
No, that's a great example for people that are struggling with stuff, and it doesn't necessarily even have to go to as an extreme as as what you've got going on. It can be something as simple as like, I don't feel comfortable on a video, or I don't like my voice. Like,
Yeah.
all of these things come into play, and they're
Yes.
while yours obviously is more medically based, and you can't just overcome it by saying I'm not going to do that anymore. It kind of gives
Right.
you the ability to kind of think down that line of like, okay, if Juan can overcome these things that are placed in front of him as a person in the real estate industry, I can do the same thing. Like, I can overcome these things that I can control. And putting it into perspective, I think that message can help quite a bit, quite a few people, I think, if they look at it in that light.
Um, and I hope they do, right? Because honestly, there are some times where we fall back, but and sometimes a person unwillingly can get into a victim mentality, right? So, and I'm a very good example of that. That's happened to me quite a few times throughout my lifetime, right? But there was just that point of, okay, I can overcome this. How am I going to do this? I have to keep going. And at the end of the day, it's fail and fail and fail until you get it right. Man, who said it? Um, there was, I forgot who is very wealthy entrepreneur. And I follow him, but basically he just said you only have to get things um, once right. And I'm not sure if that was Gary Vaynerchuk
I
or
think it was,
Alex Hormozi. I think it was
yeah,
Gary. Yeah, I think it
yeah,
was Gary. And there's just so much logic, and that's why I follow him because it's so logical. It makes sense to me. So it's like you really only have to get things once right,
yeah.
and
He
you
talks
go
about that
from
all
there.
the time, where he talks about failing, like, hundreds of times before you failed twice, right? Like, he's iterated and iterated and iterated before you even finish your first product. And it's I go back to something that was said in a coaching program for us all the time, and it revolves around just doing video. But my crappy video is better than your no video, right? So if
Right?
I'm putting something out there, it's better than you just sitting on your butt not doing anything. And that's there's some pride in that too. So getting through those failures and finding, most of the time it's not going to be a huge win. And I think that's the tough part, is everybody's kind of looking for like this massive buildup and a huge payoff at the end where everything goes through the roof. And
Yeah.
maybe that's a societal issue in itself, but a lot of it comes in where it's not about that. Like you do the small things every single day and you see nothing, and then you look back and you go, whoa, like I came a long way. But you have to be able to get yourself to a place to be able to look back on it, and that's where the real wins come in.
That that is so true. Um, that and that is like in all aspects of life, not just business, right? So and that's why, and I'm not gonna like plug myself in or anything like this, but that's why I chose a particular name on my TikTok, is always falling forward, because literally it's taking my personal journey, and I find it humorous, but even though I haven't had an episode in a long time, knock on wood, it's I always get back up, literally, afterwards. So it's that's why I decided to start that, and then I stopped because I had a moment in life where I was like, okay, I can't do these videos anymore. But then I'm like, you know what? Let me get back to it, and I responded to a couple comments, but it really is that, um, just putting yourself out there. I wish I would have known that sooner, like in life, right? When I was growing up, but here we are, right?
Yeah, I think you wouldn't be the person you are today. Obviously, we can go as cliche as it possibly can be, right? Like we wouldn't be the people we are without going through what we've gone through. And ultimately, even with that knowledge, we may have still made the same decisions in different directions, and ended up completely different because it's one thing. I like to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt of we did what we did because we had certain information and we thought that was the best move. And looking back, obviously, we've got years piled on of more information. So if we look back and we go, well, if I'd have given myself that information and then I made the same choice again, then I would have just willingly ignored the correct answer. And so, like,
Mm.
you can kind of look back and be like, I would have been a completely different person because I would have chosen, and mine revolves around alcohol. I've done a lot of obviously introspection about that. But the idea of, I still would have chosen to go drink that night, even with the knowledge that I have,
Yeah,
in some directions. And so then that would have made me I would have had a different view on myself because of that, not having that knowledge. So I think looking back across your life, you just got to give yourself the benefit of the doubt in those scenarios and going, I did the best I could with the information I had, and I did the best I could with what talents I had at that point. And now I look back and I go, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was, but that's the way I have to look at life through my lenses, because otherwise you're going to tear yourself down on situations that you have literally no control over. They don't even exist anymore. They're in the past.
that's very true. Um, and this might not be related, but it also, well, it is kind of related, but it's there's a point where technically I shouldn't be here, having this conversation. And when I was 3, like my dad was performing CPR on me in the back of a car while my mom drove to the hospital. I don't think I ever told you that. Um, and there were other moments in time where things happened where it just, I'm here for a reason, right? And that goes to what you were saying. It's like, all right, we are these people because we've experienced these things in the past. So I am grateful every single day that I wake up, right? We open our eyes, we breathe. Something as complicated as that and as easy as that is just, it's just gratitude. It is. So, and that's what, that's why I keep going. Um,
Yeah.
it's not easy, but yeah.
It's
Hey, it's
it's
not, man.
honorable and yeah, I mean, it's your direction and your emphasis and your energy is honorable to see from the outside in. And I know that, as the inner struggle that many people have, and all of us, I'm sure, have at some point, that's tough to portray that at all times. And like I truly, it's a pleasure, and I'm grateful that have the ability to be connected with you and follow you and kind of follow your journey. And being able to touch in like this is really cool too.
Yeah,
Like we
it
did
is.
the first podcast like a year and a half ago, and now we're kind of connecting again and seeing the growth there. So I truly appreciate you spending some time with us here, and
Yeah.
I'll make sure to put all of your social media stuff in the description and stuff like that, so people can find you. And if you have any questions for Juan, I'm sure he'd love to see a comment from you. So
No, absolutely. And thank you, Ryan, for
all
having
right.
me again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening in, and we'll see you on the next one.